Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Presentations. MHS Student Advisory Committee. Who's
Thank
up?
you. It looks like we're missing a few of the members, but this is Samantha.
Hi, I'm a senior, and tomorrow night there will be a presentation for If Only. It's made by the Marlborough Foundation and from the Millennium Health. Tomorrow night it'll be open to everyone, so teens and adults are encouraged to attend. It's free, and there'll also be babysitting there. So if you need to bring your young kids, they'll be trusted with National Honor Society kids that will take care of them while you're in the presentation. After the presentation, there will be a panel there full of the Marlborough Police. Mark Leonard will be there, and also James Wahlberg will be part of that, so that's interesting. And tomorrow during school, 9th graders get to go and see this presentation also at the middle school, and they'll be taken out of school during A period to see this. And it's If Only is about the abuse of prescription drugs and basically informing adults and teens to be aware of things that are happening today in our society and just to be safe.
Great.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Just a comment. I attended it last year in Hudson, and it is really worthwhile seeing. It was very moving and extremely powerful. So I encourage everybody who hasn't seen it to please do so.
Late breaking news, we have about 308 people who have signed up through Eventbrite. And if those in the audience or who are hearing this have not yet signed up, it's a free event. You can feel free. Our communications coordinator has put out all of the information on the Marlborough website. You can sign up there. We certainly have room for more, but we have quite a few already signed up. It should be a wonderful day, so thank you.
Is there a cutoff number?
No, we're holding
it's
it
in the middle school.
purposely in the Whitcomb Auditorium because we want to be able to cover as many folks as we can, knowing I was also with you, Mrs. Ryan, at that presentation in Hudson. It was completely full. It
yeah.
was packed.
Okay, great, thank you.
Heidi DePercio?
Hi, I'm a junior this year, and I just want to talk about the schedule that we piloted between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So this schedule, it had a lot of changes from what we do on the normal basis and what we've done in years past. And some of those really positive ones that I liked were that we had a Panther period, they were called. So every Wednesday for a 45-minute class period, students who needed help in classes had the opportunity to go to those, and other students had the chance for a little elective, if you will, of like stress relief or yoga, those types of things, or they could also just opt for a study hall. So I thought that was a really great way to help make sure that every student was getting a little extra time for what they needed to be doing during the school day. And another thing that I really liked about this schedule was that our classes were a little bit longer. We had more time spent on learning, and I thought that was a good thing to kind of increase that, because that was what was most important in doing this, that we were increasing that amount of time. Of course, this did have some downsides. Something, that was, from my perspective and a lot of students, wasn't a good thing, was that we cut out homeroom except for once every 2 weeks. And so that kind of made it hard because you had to go right in from walking into the building to your first period class. So you didn't have a chance to go to the locker room or put stuff in your locker, and you just kind of had to get right into learning. So I thought that was kind of hard to settle yourself into the day when you didn't really have a chance to at all. And another new thing about this schedule was that we had the rotating. It rotated, which I think ideally would be a really great thing because, studies have proven that that helps students to learn more. So I think that would be a really positive thing. But unfortunately, due to part-time staff and other things, we weren't able to have it just rotate through day after day. So it seemed to me and to a lot of other students that it was kind of a random rotation almost. So not only did you not get a chance to go to homeroom and to relax before your day started, but you had to go right into whatever class you had and not really know where you were going next and what period you had lunch and stuff like that. So that made it really kind of confusing and stressful too. But I did really appreciate that we piloted this for this short amount of time as opposed to just adding it in next year, because now we know what sorts of things work, and they got feedback from all the students and teachers and parents even. So we know what aspects are going to work for this and what don't, and so hopefully that'll be used to create an even stronger schedule next year. But as for what we did this year, I found it to be just a little bit hectic and confusing overall. Thank you.
Catherine.
Kind of as a follow-up on that, you kind of mentioned it, but I just wanted to make sure about the lunch periods. If I had understood correctly, like it was kind of haphazard, and I guess that's the wrong word. How about that? It was a little confusing about when you were going to have lunch, because you didn't stay with whether you were always in, the first period or in the second period. It kind of changed sporadically. Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, since the schedule rotated, you had different classes during the lunch period, and some classes have first lunch and some have second. So a lot of students didn't even know, like, oh, I have history. What does that mean? What lunch do I go to? So yeah, definitely, you had different lunches every day.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify, because that was the feedback I was hearing at home, but I'm in an insular world, so it's good. I'm glad that you guys were able to give feedback, and I think if I understand correctly, there's still the ability for parents to provide some feedback. There were some links that I believe sent out so that parents can hopefully provide some feedback too from, either perspective of what they've heard, or I believe students all had that opportunity too in school. So
Yeah.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heidi. Ms. Rambridge, anything you want to add tonight? Did you think Heidi's assessment of the schedule was pretty accurate? Did you feel similarly?
A little bit, but I kind of like homeroom, or no homeroom. Yeah, I mean, I had enough time every morning. If you get to school on time, then it's fine.
Okay, see, lots of people have lots of opinions. Thank you for yours, Heidi. Next, we have a presentation from the ELL department.
So Lynn Medallion is here this evening to run us through some updates for the English Language Learner Department. She is the director of ELLs in our district. This update is just going to bring you through some of the changes with respect to numbers of students that have come in and maybe what levels they are. Most importantly, she's going to talk about the new changes in the cut scores for the access testing, which we're undergoing right now, and the impact that that will have. And the last thing is, in your packet, you have 2 pages of something called an SEI Smart Card, and she's going to tell you about how we've used this on our walkthroughs, and we've made it available to all of the administrators in the district. So Lynn Medallion.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for having me. So as Superintendent Grulich mentioned, I'm going to just walk you through our growth. As you know, for the past few years, our department has continued to grow with new students. And this year has not only not been any different, but even gone beyond what we have been used to in new student numbers. So you can see that from 2014, steadily upwards, we've been increasing in all the different schools. However, especially if you look at the high school, this last year, I have numbers from October 2016. Of course, this last October, the high school is 125. And as of January 3rd, I think, when I finally put these numbers together, we were at 142. But the joke is, like the weather in New England, just wait a minute and it will change. So we are steadily growing. So now students who are identified as being in need of English services are now 20% of our school population if you factor in students at the Early Childhood Center, which, as you all know, in the younger grades, our percentages are higher than up at the higher grades. So I wanted to just walk you through a little bit about what the EL's levels mean, the English proficiency levels, because every student, when they come in, we assess their level of English, and they're given a score of a 1 through 6, 6 being fluent. 1s are students who have very little to know. I mean, maybe they can count to 10, maybe they know a few numbers, that sort of thing. 2s, you're starting to get a little bit of language. An EL3, this student could probably carry on a conversation, anywhere from carrying on a broken conversation, making errors, but you get the gist of it, to sounding almost, perfect, if you will, but the academic language still is not there at that level 3. And then the 4 and the 5 is when they're starting to really build, hopefully, their academic language. And the state recommends that each level of student gets different services. So obviously the students who are 1s and 2s, they're looking at 2 to 3 periods a day of explicit English language development classes to help them learn the language. Anyone who has learned a language, I imagine, would think that that would be a very helpful time to understand what's going on and to get some lessons on the language itself. Level 3s, they split as like a low 3 and a high 3. 3s can either have 2 periods a day or a period a day. And then the 4s and the 5s, they're recommending a period a day. And this affects us a lot, obviously, staffing-wise. As the superintendent mentioned, staffing is always so fun, in trying to figure out the schedule. We have this year 40 extra students from September and the same amount of staff. So we've absorbed them. They're absorbed into our classes, and we have an amazing staff, some of whom are here this evening. So they are doing very well. However, the numbers start to get very large this time of year. As students get higher up in the proficiency level, then they're in their general education classrooms even more, and therefore the EL portion of it is lesser. On this slide, I want to put down the percentages of the kids in the different levels. Because of the fact that they're serviced differently, I felt this was very important. As you can see, if you look at level 1 and 2, which for most of the schools I just put together because we service them together quite often. 19% at Keene and Richer of those low-level English speakers, 28% at Jarrick, 42% at Whitcomb, and if you put the 2 levels together, which I did not on this slide because in the high school we actually have separate classes for 1s and 2s, so I did keep them separate, but they are 53% of the EL population at the school. So those are some students who need a lot of those ELD, English Language Development classes that we're talking about. And as you go through, the numbers get lower, but that is how the breakdown is. And so if you think of it, thinking of the previous slide, 53% of the 142 students at the high school is about 75 students up at the high school who are at the lowest level of the English proficiency, which I hate to sound so negative. They're incredible students who have 1+ language instead of just 1. So they're learning their second language. However, I think that it must be so intimidating for these students to come into a high school and try to learn the content with the language at the same time. So they have my respect. Students exited. Every year, we exit students once they achieve proficiency. So the state also gives us recommendation on this. And they have asked in the past that an overall score of a 5. So if the student on the overall has an English language proficiency level of 5, we could exit them as long as they do ask us to look at the reading and the writing and to make sure it's not under a 4. Because remember I said that if they're a 3, they're really not academically proficient. So you don't want to look at exiting a student unless they've achieved some level of academic proficiency. So last year we exited 135 students, which was about 15% of the program at that time. And in years past, we have been very successful having our students move through the levels. We're always looked at, as all districts are, on how many of our students achieve proficiency and how quickly they move through the different levels based on the access test, which is the English language test they take January, February, which we just began this week. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that access test because it's changed. Last year, we had a new access test called the Access 2.0, which may sound slightly familiar for MCAS fans out there. So the Access 2.0 was our newest access test. It was optional online last year, and we had our Whitcomb School take part of the online last year. This year, it's all online, except for the younger grades in some areas. Now, normally when you have a brand new test, they come with new cut scores. And those are the scores that decide if the student gets the 1 or the 3 in the different areas. The access test measures reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So the child gets 4 scores. And these new cut scores, for whatever reason, they were decided last year not to put the new scores towards last year's test. So they went with the old cut scores. And they were curious, they being people at the state, how that may affect the access scores. They were wondering, would they be similar to the Access 1.0? Would they be accurate and useful? And they did decide to go with the old scores. Now, in a minute on this slide, if you can see it, they give a little description of a chart I'm going to show you in 2 slides. So I'll come back to this and show you how it's read in a moment. But what they found out when they compared last year's scores that they gave the students based on the old scores, and if they had put the new cut scores towards the tests, they found in the listening domain they were about the same, which is good news. They found out that in reading, some students were half a proficiency level too high, and in some areas, the scores the kids received last year were a full proficiency level too high. Writing was similar, that it was about right in some of the grades, but about a half a proficiency level too high in a few of the grades. Speaking, however, some of those scores, they're saying students received 2 levels higher than they would have if these new cut scores had been in place. So let me show you what that looks like. So we have this very colorful graph, and down at the bottom it has the different levels. Blue is level 1, orange level 2, so forth and so on. And the very first one is a Roman numeral 1 next to the number 1. The first one is the scores the students in Massachusetts actually were given, and in first grade. And the next one was a score they would have gotten if they had had the new cut scores. So you can see there's a little discrepancy in some of those areas. In that case, actually, if you look at that gray, which is level 3, some of those students would have, gotten a level 2, and you move forward. If you look over, I'm just going to jump for a minute around 5th grade, where you see the little V, that yellow is a 4. A lot of students got a 4 on the test last year. Had the new cut scores been in place, lots of those students would have been 3s. This is going to affect our program next year because remember the slides before, 3s receive more ELD than 4s and 5s do. This is the same writing test scores. Sorry, I didn't mention that was writing, but this is grades 7 to 12, and that was grades 1 to 6. And in this one, you can see this exact same idea, sorry for that little bar at the bottom, that there really was this discrepancy. Now, even more interesting, and I use that term in a, fun way, is that the state is now also saying not to exit students until they receive a 5 in every domain. Not overall, but in every domain. So once again, I'm going to go back to the grades 1, 2. They need to get a blue or a green if you're a color person like me. And if you look there, whenever you see blue, that's what they got, not what they would have gotten. There's very little in those, I'll say normal numbers, the Roman numbers of the blue or green. In the 7th or 12th, very similar, very little of that blue or green, which would indicate that students can exit. So there's a couple things, and a reason I think it's really important to bring that to this committee, is that, one, we've had a lot of new staff, and that staff is working hard, and that staff is making progress with these students and having a lot of success. It's not going to look like that when we get these scores, because students who would have or did get a 5 last year potentially have grown, but will look like they got a 4. And so when we get those scores, to me, it's almost like a blank slate again. I'm going to wait for next year's scores to then compare the growth. The other major thing we have to remember is those 135 students we exited last year, many of those students would not have been exited based on this. So that number of 920 EL students we currently have potentially would have been over 1,000. But that seems doom and gloom, but it's not, because the students are the same that they were last year, the same they were last week, with the same abilities and the same weaknesses and the same things they have to work on. It's our job in the district to make sure that what we're giving them is what they need, which is what we have always done. It just means that we have to look at it closer. Our numbers are going to be a little higher, and we have to just take this year's access scores, looking at what it means about the children's abilities and what we need to work on. And I won't be able to come in the spring and say, yay, look how well we did, like we always do. But I think we will do well. It just won't be showed in this. So I don't end on such a, we're going to have 4,000 ELs by, spring of 2017. Some things that are going on this year. One, knowing all this information I just gave you. We're continuing working on creating and strengthening our ELD curriculum K-12. This has been, we're probably in our 3rd year of this project. It's using the latest in what DESE is doing in their model curriculum units, and it's incorporating into units that we had already created. looking at that academic language that we want from that very first level, level 1. If we're talking cause and effect, we put up sentence frames that teach them cause and effect relationship, and they begin speaking them. We're continuing to offer professional development to classroom and content teachers to extend the learning of those retail SEI courses you heard so much about for the last 3 years. That course was great, depending, but it wasn't it. It wasn't the be-all, end-all, and we need to continue the learning of the teachers and the support as well in those classrooms. We also need to make sure we're giving PD to the teachers who were not able to take that course, of which there were many. And that would, of course, be because Desi had mentioned core academic teachers, and that was very narrowly defined. So we have other teachers in the district who would benefit from that. We're always looking at program models, always looking at, can we do it better? Can we do it more efficiently? Better for the students, better for our staff, better in every way. Always looking for that. And I've been doing a little tour of Marlborough, showing off the new cut scores, having great conversations with EL staff, and we're talking a lot about that. What do we think is the best for the kids, and how would we support that? Always looking at staffing. We're here right before budget season. We have 40 new kids this year alone. We're not going to exit probably 120 we would have. It's going to affect numbers. That's just the reality of it. And then, excitingly, and somewhat off subject, but not really, is that we're on year 4 of our adult ESL classes that we're offering to our community, which is very exciting. Those will probably start in March. Families who are listening, we'll be sending that out in February. However, it's our 4th year of that class, which is wonderful, to our community to build their English skills. For the first year, we look as though we're going to be able to offer Spanish and Portuguese courses to our staff. And in the plan, it'll be the same night as adult ESL classes, which will allow these two groups to talk and converse and practice with each other. That, in the best way, works towards our district goal number 2 of enhancing the relationships between school and community. I mean, in my head, I see it that then you can be in Price Chopper and you see a parent and you're like, hey, ¿cómo estás? And they're like, very good, thank you, and it could just be this beautiful kumbaya moment. So that is what we were working on in EL. And one thing I wanted to mention to you is when we talk about supporting classroom teachers, and of course administrators as well, we have this thing called the SMART card, or as we like to say in Marlborough, the SMART card. And it was developed by the state, the district, the Department of Ed. And what it is meant to be is something that people can look at, people being administrators, school committee, teachers, as what a good program for students learning English would look like. It's not evaluative. It's supposed to be the baseboard or springboard of a discussion. So it talks about things you would see if you walk into a classroom. You see visuals on the walls. You'd see the kids talking, practicing English. And this SMART card, a lot of people look at it and they have trouble finding what's so special for EL here, because it's just great instruction with a layer of focusing on language. It's having the kids talk. It's focusing on academic language. Nobody speaks academic language as a first language. So the more teachers work on getting that into their lessons and getting it into their plans and having students talk to each other, the better. And if it serves our ELs at the same time, excellent. Questions?
Lynn, thank you for the information. The exited students, is there a way that we can reach back to make sure that they are actually still achieving what needs to be achieved, or whether they still need services? I'm
Excellent
sure
question.
you probably are following them, but I'm just curious.
We may just hire you. No.
I
So
can't.
when students exit, we always monitor them for 2 years, and now the new regulations, because we did get a new guidance document, that's why you're hearing about all these new things.
Right.
We watch these students for 3 years now. We ask their teachers how they're doing, we look at scores on testing, and if they need support, then we pull them back in
Okay.
and offer that support. Thank you.
I kind of thought you probably were, but
Thank
better
you
to
very
ask
much.
rather
No,
than
that was a good clarification.
rather than assume. And the other thing, which I really was interested in, relative to the proficiency levels, specifically one thing that I was wondering, because our numbers seem so high at high school, and I was just really curious, like, are these students that have matriculated through, or are these new students coming in? Because we do talk about, students coming in here, here, and here. But I think that that's not necessarily something that, from a community standpoint, everyone really understands. And I think it would be helpful to have your lens, because you're seeing that constant flow of people coming in at whatever grade level.
Right. So, for example, if you're looking at the high school where they have, the 53% who are 1-2s, that's about 75 students. On record, and it's an important distinction, on record it looks as though 75 students entered in from March 1st, and that's an important date because that's when testing will count or not count for Parker MCAS this year.
Right.
So 75 students entered in from March 1st who are level 1s and 2s. Some of those kids might potentially entered in 75 kids, 2 or 3 of those might have been a level 3 or whatever, and some of the 1-2s at the high school could have been in 8th grade.
Right.
Usually students move out of level 1-2 within that 1 or 2 years.
Okay.
So when you look at students who are in the 1-2s, it is very odd, and we take a lot of attention if a student's in there for a 3rd year, because we want them to hear more language, move up to that higher level, and have the support, and also the classroom, expanded classroom experience.
Well, and one of the other reasons that it kind of was hitting me is in our policy subcommittee, we're actually talking about the attendance policy.
Mm-hmm.
And, one thing that really did come up is it's massively important, not only, in high school do you have to meet a certain requirement, but across the board, we need to make sure that the students are attending regularly, because there's absolutely no way that we're going to have enough effect if the students are not there on a regular basis.
Right.
So, it's kind of more of a plea of, if we want the students to be successful, the family, the community as a whole really needs to make sure that attendance becomes a priority, and they're there. To
And-
Susan's point,
Right.
that they're there on time.
And it's true for every student.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine for a student who is coming in, at 14 or 15 in the high school and wants to graduate, and they're a level 1 EL student. They need to be in there. They need to be in there every day. They need to take advantage of any extra help we're giving after school. We've had tutoring sessions in the past. We of course have our extended year program for our EL 1-2 students. So they need to take advantage of all of that to be able to get to where they'd like to be.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, I have a couple questions. So at what point in the process do they start having to take MCAS?
Excellent. So any student who has enrolled in a district prior to March 1st of the previous year needs to take it. So what that means, and this is the worst way to explain it, but I will. If a student comes, February 15th of this year, then next year their test will count. But if they come after March 1st, next year it won't count, and they have another entire year.
So potentially, there are students in our district who are ELL 1s that are needing to take it.
Yes, yes.
So that's an important thing for people to understand
Yeah.
when they are looking at our overall scores and seeing such a high population of students. My second question is, can you give us an idea of how many, I know there's a term for it and I've forgotten, the students who had not previously had
Oh, SLIFE
Schooling.
students, yes.
SLIFE.
SLIFE, students with limited or interrupted formal education. We did actually screen for that, and it's the first year we have it in the Department Ed and in their computer. We have about 21 students at the high school that we have identified. Now, that is students who have come in the last 2 years. It gets very muddied if I start going back for high school students, let's say, a student that I knew in 6th grade, where I might know their history, but they've now been with us for 3 or 4 years. We had to start somewhere.
Agreed.
So we started with students that we knew from last year and entering students.
Okay, so just to clarify for the public, these are students, 21 of them, who in a year will have to take MCAS, most likely, and who have never been in school in their home country.
Some might have been. Part of the definition is it could be interrupted schooling.
Okay.
So this could be students who might have gone every day, but school was only a half day, or school closed because the weather wasn't good, and some of these rural communities and other countries, the school day can be cut up quite a bit due to weather and different things. It could be a student who went to 2nd grade and then couldn't pass the 2nd grade tests and remained in that grade for a couple years. I bet if I looked at the 21 of them, the 21 would have almost completely different stories. But what we find from them is that in math and literacy, they are functioning 2 years or more below their grade level.
It's a lot to catch up.
It's a lot to catch up.
And learn English.
And learn. Well, and you know that you can do it simultaneously, but I have all the respect in the world for these students because I got to learn Spanish in my 20s while I was living abroad and having fun. Totally different,
Right.
situation.
Yeah. So the one thing that when you said that the state is now looking to ensure that all of the students are level 5 in all categories before leaving the program, my thinking is that is kind of a good thing in terms of us working towards closing the achievement gap.
I would say so. After we got over the initial shock of looking at that and,
The
and what
sheer
that looked
numbers
like,
and the staffing issue, of course.
we had the discussion that it actually more closely mirrors what we know about language acquisition anyways. Our students are doing exceptionally well, and they were flipping through these levels very quickly. But I presented in the past, 5 to 7 years it normally takes for an educated person to become fluent in another language, 7 to 10 for a student with any sort of interruption in schooling. So the fact that most of our students were going through these levels and scoring high on these tests in 4 years made us look wonderful, which we are, of course, but also was questionable. And then they weren't doing as well as we wanted them to in their classes in MCAS. So you're right, it probably is closer to what is the reality of learning a language.
And so if they stay in the system, in the ELL system a little bit longer, then they'll still get the FLEP couple years afterwards?
Exactly. And of course, we're looking at the fact, and now I'm probably going to get a little too muddied, but if a student would have been a 3 and is now going to be called a 2, we're looking at the fact it still might not be appropriate for that student to give what we had been giving 2s because their language was higher. So we really are going to take this next 6 months, 8 months, to really look at what we think is the best for these students, because the worst thing you can do is hold them back. You want the least restrictive environment, just like with anything else. So if a student is able to do more, able to be surrounded with more language successfully and build their confidence, that's what we want. So we're going to have to really look at, this might be a 2 on paper, but they would have been a 3.5, so what are we going to do with that student?
Yeah. Well, it's differentiating instruction.
It really is, yeah, which
Same
is...
that we're doing with all our children.
Exactly.
Awesome. That's it for me. Oh.
One that came too. I think we talked about it at one other visit a while ago. What about immersion, doing some kind of an immersion program where you're talking about the inclusion of everyone. And if I remember correctly, wasn't it Framingham was actually...
Framingham has...
They still do it.
They have something like that. I mean, with the way that our population is kind of growing, I mean, is there advantage towards looking at that and having, classrooms where it's, kind of taking advantage of the peer-to-peer?
I believe, and that's, so if you ask anyone, you could probably get the split.
Right.
Pretty much anyone who works in EL, however, normally thinks what I'm about to say, that when you have a strong base in your first language, it can only help you in your second.
Right.
So if you're able to teach a child literacy skills in their first language, the transfer of that, it would seem to anyone, would be easier. That being said, people can find studies saying it hasn't made much of a difference, which is why way back in 2003, there was such a successful push to end bilingual education, because people were able to find the other studies, if you will. It's always an interest of mine. It's always, and we've talked about it a lot, just as what it would take. It would take a lot of planning, and it would take a lot of discussion, a lot of finding the right people who are that fluent themselves to teach in
Right.
it. But it's probably it's always worth the discussions to see if it's...
Well, just, it seems like something that, no harm gained from not having the discussions around it. I mean, our population is obviously growing, yet we've always talked about how important learning a second language really is for all of our students anyway. And frankly, from a financial standpoint, we have not been able to really push it down further at younger ages yet.
Depending on the model that a district goes with, if it is truly a bilingual model, then all the other students of Marlborough get to, see the wonderful opportunity that there is. I mean, I think already, and I've had a lot of conversations with teachers, we're trying to look for more opportunities that our Spanish language classes would be able to interact with our Spanish speakers, because why wouldn't you?
Right.
Why wouldn't you, have that set up so that you have your students speaking to an actual speaker of Spanish without having to travel anywhere?
And we
You know.
start that at an early age when everybody's sopping up anything around them anyway. Why not start them at an earlier age and continue it on through from a trajectory standpoint? So throwing it out there. Why not?
Yeah, why
It's
not?
budget season.
Well, and I just also want to mention that it's great that we'll be able to offer Spanish and Portuguese to our staff as well.
A lot of staff
And I
have said they
remember
wanted
years
it.
ago, wearing my MEF hat, Claire Nicholson at Jarrick School got asked for a grant to get, I don't know,
Rosetta Stone.
Rosetta
Yeah,
Stone
Rosetta
in
Stone. I remember
in
that,
Portuguese,
yes.
so
Yes.
that they could.
Well, and of interest, these particular
great.
classes, the Spanish and Portuguese classes, will be paid for through our FSU, our Framingham State University Mass Excels grant. So depending on its success, it will be looking at how to fund it in future years, since this is our last year of that grant. But I believe we're going to be able to pull it off this year, so I'm taking advantage of the possibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great. Yes.
Yeah, I have to hire you as our, exited student coordinator first. All right.
On a volunteer basis.
Right.
Thank you very much.
No double
Yes.
dipping you. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks. Next, we have Mr. Platty, Director of Instructional Technology.
So we're delighted to have Tom Platty in the district. Some of you might recall that Tom did an audit in 2013 for us, and part of the results of that audit that he shared with us in this very room, that we needed an instructional technology director. So this is our first year that we have an instructional technology director on staff. So I've asked him to give a presentation tonight. He has his team of instructional technology specialists with him, and he's going to talk a little bit about the work that has gone on this year in technology, as well as talking about successful deployment of technology in some of our curricular areas. And he's also going to talk about the January 25th administrative dinner meeting, where the focus of it will be on goal number 3, district goal number 3, which is the creation of a 3-year technology plan, something that we've been waiting on for a long time in the district. So thank you, Tom.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to see you again. I really enjoyed seeing you as students about a month ago, and now seeing you in a different role. The first part of my presentation, I'm going to briefly talk about some of the important work that has been done since I arrived in July of this year. The steps are outlined there, virtually talking just about everyone, getting to know the existing environment, meeting multiple times with building administrators, teachers, curriculum leaders, hiring 3 instructional technology specialists, which I'll talk to you about a little bit more in a second, and then working with successful deployment of the Chromebooks in the different grade levels and getting professional development going at different levels. And most importantly, developing a strategy for constructing a 3-year plan in line with our district goal. And our district goal is shown right there, support high quality instruction by having an acceptable 3-year technology plan that covers the different areas. And we're starting off, the major way of starting off is an administrative dinner meeting coming up on January 25th. But it's not just going to be administrators. It's going to be curriculum leaders, teacher leaders, IT staff, tech staff, and others. And what we're going to do in the first part of the meeting is we're going to have a presentation remotely by Julie Evans. Julie Evans is a nationally known leader of Project Tomorrow, and every year she presents to the subcommittee of Congress her work. And her work is, after doing surveys of 50,000 teachers, 4,000 administrators, 25,000 parents, and about 300,000 students every year. And she produces major reports, such as looking like something like this each year, essentially speaking up of 2014 national findings from K-12 students, understanding technology, enhanced learning in the lives of today's students. After we do that 45 minutes, we are going to do something else here. We're going to divide the participants in different groups, and using our Google platform, we're going to look at these groups in curriculum, professional development, in hardware, digital citizenship, and data culture. And we're going to look at what the current situation is, what the action steps we'd recommend for 2017-18, our first year, and for at the end of 3 years in 2020. Now, this is just the first draft. We have to then go around and talk to lots of other people, including students, including teachers, including people that weren't at that meeting. But that is a first draft, and we hopefully will get back to you with a plan, a 3-year technology plan in May, and present it to you in April or May of this year. But what I want to talk to you about 3 delightful people that I've gotten a chance to work with for several months here. And they're right there. You know, Chris Randall, who's our high school instructional technology specialist, Nancy Maurice over there, who's our elementary specialist, and Cheryl Pukowski, who's our middle school technology specialist. And what they've done is they are teachers, and they coach teachers on how to use technology instruction. And if you could play an example, Nancy.
As a technology integration specialist, I am able to work with teachers to make technology meaningful. As a former classroom teacher, I am able to help teachers utilize technology to further curriculum goals. Teachers know that coming from the classroom, I approach technology in a way that makes sense to them. I will help to bridge the gap between what they know and what they want to accomplish. I am able to introduce and model how specific tools can be used, as well as the teaching methodology that accompanies it. Technology integration is one more way we are preparing our students for the global society of the 21st century.
But I would also like to talk to you today about 3 important initiatives that we have going on here that we started this year. First one is working with math elementary schools. If I asked you to add these 2 numbers, I know right away that you would pick up the way that I'd added 8 plus 7 got 15, and 30 plus 30 got 60, and I got 75. That's because you have these numbers in your head. They're automatic to you, 8 and 7, 30 and 30. If they're not automatic, you'd be having problems. And kids are having problems if they're not automatic when they go to working with decimals, when they're going to work with fractions, when they're going to work at higher levels with algebra. So how do you make this automatic? How do you put this in long-term memory? Well, the way we used to do it is we got 144 flashcards, right? And your parents used to present one at a time or until you knew them all. Well, brain research says that's not the way to do it. And the people out of Vanderbilt University School of Education, under Ted Hasselbrain, came up with a plan and saying, here's the way you should do it. And they made use of technology. And I'll show you an example. First, you find out what they do know. Here's an example of a young lady who's doing multiplication. And you see the facts she does know are in light color. And there are certain facts she doesn't know. But rather than give them all the facts together, what you do is present them with 2 or 3 study facts. And you take these 2 and 3 study facts, and you map them with the fluent facts. More and more fluent facts. Just the same 2 and 3 study facts until they become in long-term memory. Now, what kind of result does this have? This is a student that I picked at random from grade 3. We only started this program in November, most in mid-November. This is November 1st. And you see this youngster knows what you would expect him to know, the zeros and ones. You see that going across and going down. And some of the work going diagonally, the 3 plus 3, 4 plus 4 plus 5, 5 plus 5. That's pretty typical. This same student, 1 month later. Grade 4, and we're talking about 10 minutes a day, 3 to 4 times a week. Grade 4, a student doing addition in November, 1 month later. We also have data from the whole school. We've been able to get 2 schools, grade levels summarized. First school, Richer School, went from 3% total, fluent or near fluent, 3% in the top 2 categories, to 27% in 1 month. And over 60%, 65% know at least 50% of these facts in 1 month. Remarkable change in a 1 month period. We see the same kind of results in Kane School. Multiplication, they were multiplying in grade 4, 0 through 9. Again, tripling from 9% in the fluent to near fluent from 5 to 17%, and nearly 60% now having their multiplication facts mastered at 50%. Every single grade 3 and grade 4 student are going through fast math, and that's what's important. I know being an ex-math and science teacher, that how important it is that they have this being automatic so they really can concentrate on the theory of the higher math and science as they go along. So that's one important initiative, and I see there are already remarkable results. In fact, it stunned me seeing the results in only a month, especially with Thanksgiving vacation being in between that and everything else. I also want to talk to you about a little help, and I've sort of twisted the arm of Catherine Hennessy to help me out a little bit here. And what I've asked Catherine to do, she's standing in front of a probe that you can see right there. In a second, I'm going to ask her to move back and forth. Wait a second here until I make sure I get it right. I'm going to ask her to move back and forth. Slowly back. Okay, move slowly back. And as she moves slowly back, I'm going to stop it here. What you see on the vertical axis is distance, and the horizontal axis is time. Now, Catherine, can you move closer again? Move up front again. And I'm going to ask you to move back faster than before. Okay, when I say not yet, okay. When I say go, okay. Move back faster than before. Now, okay, I stopped it. Now what you see is a sharper graph. And the idea of the relationship between time and distance is really a beginning of Newton's laws. It goes into more complicated with acceleration and also velocity. But Catherine's getting very good at this. So Catherine, I want you to go up close again. Right, don't save. And now, Catherine, just turn around, take a look at that graph. Just take a look at it. Turn back. And I want you to think about it, and I want you to duplicate that graph. Now, okay, and anyone in the audience could help out. Anyone in the audience could help out and give the signals here. Wait, go, okay. Yep, okay, we'll start again. We'll start again. I'll click over here, Nance. Go ahead. You're getting good, though. It's just getting good. She's getting right. One more time. She's got it. She almost got it there. One more try. Go. Forward.
There you go.
See, you got the idea. Okay, thank you. You know, this concept, the whole idea is to make things visual for students. 60% of all, I'm a visual learner. 60% of all high school and middle school students are visual learners. We talk about the difficulty of making everything linguistic in terms of science, but make it visual. You got the idea. This is not an easy concept. This is a concept in physics here. And we're working not only with this kind of probe, we're working to introduce temperature probes. We bought 2 sets of temperature probes this year for our middle school to work so kids could work and study different phases and temperature over short periods of time or long periods of time, like overnight, because it could be stay overnight. You can measure, you can collect it not every second, but collect data every half hour and see the effects of different insulation. So we're doing a lot of work with probes, and the idea is to make science and science curriculum easier to understand. The third area I'd like you to show you, a second here, is I'd like to show you what we're doing with Google Apps for Education. Now, you got a glimpse of that in terms of your work as students, but I want to show you also what we're doing in terms of our work with our middle and high school kids especially. One example is a warm-up activity. This is a history student in a grade 6 classroom. Every day, for the first 5 minutes, they do a warm-up exercise where they answer questions using their Chromebooks. Some are multiple choice questions, and some are just, you have to type a sentence or paragraph about this. In this case, they're studying continents and countries in different continents and how many continents there are. Right away, within a few minutes, then the teacher tells them, close your Chromebooks down. We're going to talk about this. and they talk and they see the answers, and the answers are instantaneously on the teacher's screen. She sees the answers to the questions that they answered in a warm-up exercise instantaneously on the screen, and also sees the answers to the fill out the sentence question, so they can see what the understanding is. She can pick on some of the sentences they put on, and she can talk about them. What a great way to do what they do formative assessment, so they can get answers to some of their work. At the high school level, this is an example of the high school level. We're also doing this in the middle school. How can you really be effective writing coaches? Well, the idea, what I like a writing coach is every time I do a draft, I want it quickly commented on and coached upon. Well, here you see a teacher, one of our high school English teachers, Chris Henry, as he comments on a student position there, and you can't quite read it there. And in fact, I can't read it with these glasses. But I think you need to explain this further, it says, and it goes on with a little paragraph up there. And so this is a comment made by it. Right away, the student can say, I like that comment, I can resolve it and make that suggestion, carry it out. Another example, the same thing. But it doesn't have to be an example of just a teacher with students. It can be an example such as this of students peer editing with other students. The idea of getting commentary back quickly and effectively in order to improve your work can be a very effective way of learning. And then I want to show you something. You know, I grew up near New York City, and I always remember a young state senator named Robert Kennedy. And what Robert Kennedy said, he said, some people see things as they are and say why. I dream things that never were and say why not. Well, I strongly believe as we push forward with our work as educators to keep dreaming things that never were for Marlborough students in the area of technology, and like Robert Kennedy, say, why not? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
More of a comment. I'm thrilled with the opportunities, not necessarily just because it's technology, but because it actually speaks to the way that multiple people learn. We all learn in different ways. Just when we were in a meeting about MTSS earlier, and I was saying I'm a visual learner, so I can read and read and read, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm always comprehending and taking everything in. But the minute I start getting a graph, or I actually have to participate in something, it means more. Like there's a little bit more excitement, and so it stays in there a little bit longer. And I appreciate these kind of tools being able to be accessible for teachers to reach students, because I think it then helps to encourage all students to be able to feel like they can be students when people have a hard time. And just, you know, with the things that Lynn was speaking about, it gives a way of crossing over. You don't have to have a language to then figure out some of these things. So this is really exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Platty.
Sorry, no communications. Superintendent's report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to call up Alex Trin and Kayla Usuferi to stand up here for a minute while I talk about something that we did today that was a great deal of fun. Today, Principal Caleri and I had the pleasure of accompanying these two Marlborough High School scholars to the annual recognition lunch. This year it was held at Clark University, and by the way, we got to take the maiden voyage in the brand new STEM van. So it was wonderful. We really enjoyed the door-to-door service. So these are some of the remarks that were made about these two, and I think you remember them from a few months ago when they were presented with another award that I gave them. Alex has a GPA of 4.7625. He's on the National Honor Society, first place in his district for American Mathematics competition. He's also president of the National Honor Society, a family trait, from what I understand. He's been selected as Boy State representative and Tri-M Music Honor Society. He is conscientious, hardworking, intelligent, and innovative. He displays outstanding leadership skills and is highly regarded by faculty and students. And Kayla has a GPA of 4.857. She ranks second in her class, National Honor Society, National Art Honor Society, president of her class, co-founder of Habitat for Humanity High School chapter here in Marlborough, Rotary Youth Leadership Award, Kayla demonstrates academic excellence, leadership, and a commitment to community service. She is a positive role model with outstanding character and academic and personal accomplishments. It was such a pleasure to have conversation with them in the van and at the table today. It was a wonderful way to spend the afternoon. So I'd like to ask Alex first if you have anything you'd like to say about today's event.
I think the event was pretty enlightening.
Thank you.
It was pretty enlightening learning about all the other kids and their achievements, both academically and extracurricularly. It's definitely pretty humbling learning about all the other bright kids and how the future is pretty good for us.
Thank you, Alex. And Kayla, anything you'd like to share?
It's definitely both exciting and humbling to be in a room full of kids who are no less than 10th in their class. It was a room full of very smart people, but also people who are doing wonderful things outside of the classroom.
Yes.
And I think it's easy, and I think I speak for both Alex and I when I say this, it's easy to be a big fish in a small pond. And I think at MHS, it's easy to get comfortable, and you forget that there are people just like you in other schools all over the state, all over the world. So I think it was really fun to see all of the students that are just like us from all the other school districts, and the things we have in common, and the things that set us apart from each other and make us unique.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And this was the Worcester County Superintendent's Association luncheon recognizing students of honor and of note in the schools. Some schools were represented by one student. If they have 250 or more in the graduating class, you had 2. So we just made the 2, and it was delightful because I'm not sure how I could have chosen between these 2. Do you have any questions for them before I know they're here with their families and may want to go? I know Kayla just came from dance. How about that?
Yeah.
How about that? Thank you so
Do
much.
either of you know what you're going to do next year yet?
My intended major is neuroscience, but at what university I'll be pursuing that, I have yet to figure out. I'm still waiting to hear back from all of them.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I'm probably going to pursue electrical engineering and computer engineering. Don't know what university either, but probably pursue that.
Great. Thank you. You make us proud.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming back. Thank you. So continuing with the report, it seems like there's a lot of heavy topics on college and career and higher education, but that's just how it fell this time around. The handouts that I included in this packet, the first one comes out of Malden, and it's a handout that talks about the state's plan to bring to scale more students of the Commonwealth to give them the opportunity for early college credit. And the reason for this is to reduce the need for remediation. The statistic now is that some 45% of high school students need to remediate in their first year of college, which is a frightening statistic. This even goes for those who score proficient and advanced in the MCAS, so there's a gap there somewhere. But in this article, I wanted to highlight for you in yellow the mention of Marlborough High School as one of the proof points in this, forerunners in this early college arena. And it said that we have credentialed high school teachers that offer college courses linked to science, technology, engineering, and math. And indeed, we do. We currently have 90 students enrolled at the high school, and they're being taught by 4 of our own teachers who have been credentialed to teach. And this is at the cost of $36,000, and this is all paid for by the YCC grant. And the pathways have been determined. They're very specific and targeted to the grant. So we're very proud of the work that Marlborough has done on the cutting edge of this. We're hoping to be noted and that we will take advantage of any competitive funding formula that the state would come up with, especially since the YCC grant will not go on forever. And I just found out from Dan Riley, the director of STEM, I know, darn it, I hate it when we don't have $1 million plus every year just to spend. Dan just let me know that he's been asked by Chris Gabrielli, who's the chair of the Board of Higher Education, to be the representative practitioner from the state of Massachusetts to present at the January 24th joint ESE board meeting This is with all the Board of Higher Ed and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to present to them the work that we have done in the district. So he called and said, "May I go?" And I'm like, yes, yes, by all means, you should go, yes, but thank you for asking. So continuing with the theme, Governor Baker has recently spearheaded another very exciting opportunity for graduating high school seniors and their families, because it talks about a substantive savings of about 40% off the cost of a traditional bachelor's degree if they attend college full-time and graduate within 4.5 years. So through this Commonwealth commitment, students start at one of the Massachusetts 15 community colleges, they transfer to a state university or UMass campus, and they continue full-time. But here's the real bang for the buck. They get a 10% per semester rebate, a tuition credit worth an average of $1,200, and a freeze on any mandatory fees. So they can end up with an associate and a bachelor's degree at an average cost of $28,000 before financial aid. This is a wonderful savings. And our guidance counselors at the high school have brochures, and they've been talking to students about this Commonwealth commitment. At my last district parent council meeting, Sharon Buckley, the director of guidance, came to address the parents, and this was one of the things she talked about and passed out the brochure. So also on the front, I wanted to let you be aware of some of the recommendations that are being pushed forth by Commissioner Chester, and they all center on the assessment proposals. And so there are 6 main ones, and we'll just look quickly through them. I read through all the material and tried to synthesize them for you. There is a thought, based on what I just said a minute ago, grade 10 MCAS, people scoring proficient and advanced, and then move on to college in need of remediation, shows a significant gap in expectations. So there is a thought that perhaps the test will move to 11th and or 12th grade rather than 10th grade. That's not in the near future, for those of you who are listening and think that your student would be involved, but that's down the road. They're also thinking of adding history and social science to the competency determination. I've talked here about the revision of those standards, and our own Jody Reyes is on that revision committee. It's a thought, there's a lot of talk about civics standards in the United States and how students are not as familiar with civics topics as they should be, and perhaps making it part of competency determination will help in that regard. Only 5% of students have been taking the chemistry and technology engineering tests, so they're thinking of dropping those. It's tremendous cost with scoring them and making the test questions. So they're thinking of simply testing in science being chemistry and technology eliminating those two and only testing in bio and physics, which makes sense. Those are our trends as well at Marlborough High School. This is really a no-brainer, adding an introductory physics retest in February, as we also have the current practice of the of the biology retest in February. They don't have that, so that doesn't seem fair. It's, especially if they're going in that streamlined fashion of just eliminating the two and keeping those two. And the other last point is getting a stakeholder group together to look at identifying and recommending options for this upcoming grade 11, grade 12 assessment program, looking at maybe not the one-size-fits-all, but maybe portfolios and different kind of assessments that would target multiple audiences of students to make sure that they can be successful in college and career. So those are just some of the things moving down the road. And one more piece of information in your packet. I copied a very lengthy but I think worthwhile letter from the association, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. It's really well worth reading because I think it articulates many of the things we've talked about at this table. If the target keeps moving, if it was, PARCC for some and MCAS for some, paper, pencil, computer-based, how is it fair to compare schools? And they're asking, please, Mr. Commissioner, don't have this accountability determination until 2019 when it's all evened out, because even though they say hold harmless, the scores will still, they're hidden there, and they'll crop up in the 4-year calculation down the road. Further, perception is reality, and when you put a percentile on the school profile, even though you're held harmless, they're calling it held harmless deferred, because the perception is already negative if you have dropped in that percentile. So there's a lot of collective effort on the part of this very important and prestigious group of superintendents. It's a wonderful association with many fine minds that lobby for what's right for the staff and the students in the Commonwealth. I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of a change in accountability that's in the offing, and I certainly would stand behind that as well. Again, a lengthy read, but I think worthwhile, and it strikes very much at the core of some of my thoughts, only much better articulated. I do have one late-breaking personnel change that I was not able to update in this report, so I'll say it verbally. I have appointed, I'm pleased to say, Dr. Robert Skaza as the interim principal of Richer School, effective Wednesday, January 11th. That's tomorrow, and his appointment will be good until the end of the school year. I have also accepted Alyssa Tully's resignation as principal of Richer School, effective today, January 10th. Plans for a permanent replacement in the principal position, and also plans for what will happen in the next few months with that assistant principal position at Richer have not yet been finalized. But that, I wanted everyone to know that latest personnel update. And that concludes my report.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Who's going next? Mrs. Murphy.
We have up next is Mrs. Murphy, the Executive Director of Primary and Elementary Education.
Good evening. I just want to update you briefly on two items. First of all, the Elementary Science Committee has begun its work. We've talked a lot about that the last couple of years. We know we have a lot of work to do in elementary with the science and social studies as well, but that those frameworks are in the process of being looked at again. We do have some barriers at the elementary level when it comes to science and social studies. And those two barriers right now are time, and the time that we are using for literacy and math. So whatever long-term curriculum solution that we have, because we do need to come up with a long-term curriculum solution, needs to be also reasonable, knowing that the amount of time we're going to have, because we also have intervention blocks and literacy and math. So what we started to look at yesterday were 4 different possible pathways that we could do. We looked at using nonfiction literature that could be embedded. I don't know that that's very popular right now. We have a lot of literature in our classrooms. We really want a little bit more hands-on, we think. We could have a science textbook, very easy, very user-friendly, but in the time, do we want students looking at a textbook in the early primary grades? Maybe, maybe not. We could research and identify some kits. We have used FOSS kits in the past. As a teacher, I did as well. You had the kits for animals 2x2, or weather and climates, or circuits and electricity. A lot of districts in this area have been trying that. They haven't been very successful lately. And so we will learn and see why that's true. And then a new thing that we're also investigating is we're going to be participating in a webinar. ASPED Collab, we curriculum directors, we've been looking at a tool called Define STEM. It's an online platform that has some project-based learning already developed. And it's interesting and intriguing because of the way that it could possibly align with what's going on at Whitcomb School. So that's another potential. And also, an hour of a project-based learning block could be a little bit more flexible at the elementary school. So we have a number of different pathways we can go. The other piece of information, including your packet, was the PD grid for next week. As you'll notice, most of the activities are whole school initiatives that are going on. A lot of follow-through on student engagement, teaching students with poverty, the themes that have been going on throughout the year, social thinking as well. Academic language targeted towards richer schools, something that they asked for as well. So it's more building-based PD. Also, we just wanted to mention that during that day, the ECC and the K-4 schools are all going to be participating in adult-only ALICE drills. That was the agreed upon protocol for this year. The plan is that, I was just talking to Louis again today, is we're hoping that the whole district will be ALICE compliant by next Wednesday. So after that day. So we have scenarios. The police are going to be in the schools. They're going to be working with all the staff members. Most of the elementary schools are going to be doing some table talk scenarios tomorrow during their staff meeting to prepare for that. But cafeteria workers and custodians will also be trained and going through scenarios before that Tuesday, even if they're in other trainings or not in the building, so that we can, by next Wednesday, have been completed this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Mrs. Matthews has a question.
Sorry.
Ms. Murphy, I know, well, obviously, because my child participated in the kits.
Yep.
Which Dow was so interested in helping provide more curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Do we see any further possibility of utilizing that?
We could continue that. That is going to be one of the pieces that I will bring forward. I have on my desk the little, I also have it, the wonderful thing about the Dow material is that we can share it through the drive, a shared drive, and so
Yeah.
that everyone can look at it. Kathy Rickoff and I both looked at it earlier before the summer. So there's a lot of material that it's aligned with.
Mm-hmm.
We know that if we're going to be looking at projects and kits, we'll probably be starting with 2 to begin with and then building.
Well,
and
and
so that's a
I
good
think that
place to
was-
start.
Right, I mean, I know you had many to select from.
Yeah.
And I know the kids who were involved in it were very involved in doing more of it.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
great, terrific.
Thank you.
I wanted to
Madam
add just one more thing. You'll recall the Hologic grant that we got last year for $30,000 is earmarked for elementary science, and I'm going to say materials, not textbooks, because whatever Mrs. Murphy and her science committee decide on, it doesn't have to necessarily be a textbook to apply that grant. So we towards instructional materials of kits or whatever is, appropriate for elementary.
Can I just ask an Alice question? I just thought of it. Are we fully prepared technologically with all of the phones and all of the other things that we need? I knew we were at middle and high, but I didn't know if we were at the elementary
They're running
as well.
drills on PA because that's an important part of Alice readiness, so that everyone knows how to use the PA system. So we'll know more on the 17th where the holes are in the elementaries.
So just to follow up on that, tomorrow during the staff meeting, I know that most of the principals are planning on giving the staff little stickers to put on their phones with the codes so that they know exactly on all the phones throughout the building if they see something that they can use the PA. There's also going to encourage them at some time on Tuesday, when there's no children in the building, to practice, to make sure. I know that there's some buildings, you get some feedback, but that's okay, we'll know what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kerbal, Dr. Kerbal.
Dr. Kerbal.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about 2 things. Mary and I had a chance to meet with our first year and second year teachers, and I wish we could meet with them every week. It's just a pleasure to meet with staff who are eager and hungry and want to learn about teaching and learning. So last week, Mary and I met with a new teacher class, about 28 teachers, and we really focused on the beginning part of lesson planning, about having an objective, knowing what you want to teach, and know what you want to accomplish in class, and being able to decide of whether students were successful. So it's called learning targets and success criteria. So I laid out the outline for the day, or for the afternoon, but teachers had a chance to practice their learning targets and their success criteria. Next week, next week, Mary and I will meet with that same group, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about lesson planning and lesson structure. Mary and I observe a lot of classes during each month, okay? And the first thing we look at are the learning targets in class, okay? And so some of our new teachers, for them, it's a process, because we think everyone knows what to do, and they don't, okay? And they're learning. So the second part of my report, the next day, Mary and I met with new teachers and their mentors. We had about 60 people in this room, highly spirited, very positive. We have a good group of people, our mentors, unselfish. And so if you look around the room, you can take a look at some of the posters that we have. They were not completed by early childhood students, but they were completed by our staff. And so what we decided to do is split on the 60 or so teachers into two groups, mentors on one side, mentees on the other, and we asked them 4 questions. For our new teachers, we asked them to answer, what was one thing your mentor has helped you with this year that has benefited you the most? And I grabbed some of the examples off the posters. For example, lesson planning, navigating teach point, advocating, general encouragement, and you can see the rest. The follow-up question was, for new teachers, what support will you need from your mentor or another staff mentor? And you can take a look at some of the examples. I'll read a few. More access to our evaluators, more feedback on how we are doing from administrators, mentors observing the mentees, an opportunity to meet a mentor before the start of the school year. For the mentor, we asked, what have you done to accelerate the progress of your mentee? Some of the results: organize their time, help with resources, problem solving, student support services, getting ready for parent conferences, sharing materials, etc. For the mentor, the follow-up question was, what will you do to accelerate the progress of the mentee? Conduct more observations, open and ongoing communication, going through the mentor handbook, and encourage teachers to get out and visit other teachers in the lunchroom. One of the things that we heard from the teacher and the mentor was how each one was supportive of each other. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Brazier.
Thank you. Tonight, I just want to give a couple updates. The first is that the business office and special education offices have moved within DEC. So we did switch some offices to create better working space for both of us. So now my office and Heather Gary's office have been traded, as well as some of the support staff. So if you're looking for me, we put signs on the walls to direct people to the right place. There's no pictures on them, but there are directions. Again, the food service account balances from last month, when I printed the report, they're getting a little bit high. Our total debt is at $26.58. I'm going to work with Roland, our new food service director, that's going to be hired from Aramark, to get a better handle on where these are coming from. Although my hypothesis would be, again, this breakfast charging that tends to be almost all of our school lunch debt at this point. Online payments, since last December, I provided the report, still strong, growing, slowly but growing. We were averaging just as many, if not more, transactions than last year. The amount has been going up, and I still continue to get good feedback from people about the program. So we're pleased to continue with it, and again, we encourage parents to sign up. You don't have to actually use it to look at your students' lunch counts. You can sign up just to take a look at what they've been buying. So you don't have to even use the online payment piece of it. The superintendent and the executive leadership team are beginning. This is a little bit, I wrote this in the past, so we are now in the middle of our budget meetings with principals surrounding our FY18 request. I put a draft budget calendar in my report. It's something that I'm happy to bring as an action item for the next meeting, but I wanted to give it to you first to consider, to think about, and maybe as an action item at the next meeting we can adopt it if it meets your standards. I just want to go over a quick review of it. So on the 14th of February, we would be bringing the superintendent's budget to the school committee for your review. And if you remember in the past, usually the night we deliver the budget, there's not a lot of discussion on it. We might just go over like the level service, but it's more for you to then take the budget and then bring it back and read it over the next 2 weeks to try to get an idea of where we are and where we're going. On March 1st, looking to have a budget meeting here, possibly in this room, possibly in the superintendent's office, depending on how the school committee feels about having it be on camera or off camera, whether you want it as a workshop model or you want it as a regular school committee meeting, as a school committee of the whole. Those are discussions for you guys to think about. On March 14th, vote to accept or reject the superintendent's budget. On the 28th, we have a regularly scheduled meeting. We could have the public hearing on the budget and then vote it in regular session. And then in early April, we would send the finalized budget from school committee down to the mayor and city council. So we think that having structured meetings can reduce the number of meetings we have in total. One thing that we're asking this year for principals is not to put the school improvement plans, we always call them SIPs, but you know, acronyms, there's too many of them in education. So the school improvement plans, we're asking to hold off on that because what had been happening in the past is the school improvement plans were built with resources that never actually came. So you notice like in a lot of the school improvement plans of the past, we would consistently have requests, for example, for an elementary librarian. And there would be a plan on why that would be good for the school and all those types of things, but we weren't able to get to that point. So what we're asking principals to do is wait until after the budget has been sent to the mayor and city council and then start to develop the plans, because then we have a much better idea of what resources will be available. So that way when they're developing the plans in April and May, then they can bring them back to the school committee with the actual resources that will be in hand at the schools, which we think will be a much better school improvement plan because it'll be based on resources that are actually available. In addition, today, Nicholas Milano, Denise, myself, we went down to Boston to the MSBA to interview design firms for the Richer project. It was a wonderful experience. I love being part of it. It was very interesting. I thought it was great, but I love this kind of stuff. The firm that was selected by the panel, which was made up of three representatives of the district and about 13 representatives from MSBA overall, so we were the minority in that small group, was Marlborough Pagano, who is their architects and project managers. They have a rather large firm. They've done fantastic work in the area. They are the architects on call for Worcester Public Schools. I believe they've done 6 projects just with Worcester. They did Leominster High School addition renovation. They recently did the Northborough Elementary School, that's right next door. They've worked for Auburn Middle School. This area is, Worcester County, this area is very big for them. They do a lot of work. So again, Marlborough Pagano, it's not necessarily 100% done yet because the mayor needs to negotiate the cost of the proposal with the firm. But Marlborough Pagano was our first choice by the committee, and they're moving them forward to the mayor for negotiations. So it was I don't know, I don't want to speak for you, Denise, but I thought it was a very interesting process. I thought we got to ask a lot of great questions. They came in and did some fantastic presentations and really made me think of a lot of things I had not thought about before when it comes to the richer site and when it comes to potentially looking at different sites for elementary schools. It was very interesting. I don't know if you want to...
You know, it was definitely interesting to see how everybody, the three different designers presented themselves and what they would offer us. It was a tough decision, I think, between us and the whole committee. But no, I think it'll work out great.
And that's my report. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee?
Whoop.
Oh. Late-breaking question.
No, I was thinking, I'm sorry. In regards to the school improvement plans, having come from school council and Mrs. Murphy, I'm gonna use her as a reference in this. Since the school councils are supposed to be working with the principals on these based on the goals of the district, the budgetary requests to me almost seem like they're a teeny piece of it as opposed to the goals of the direction. Because it's intended as a support of it as opposed to an enhancement of it. Or unless, as an example, if we said we're going to go with immersion classrooms for
A major change.
a major change that again would probably be supported by a district initiative moving rather than the parking lot.
Right, but the issue was that recently, the school improvement plans were being prepared and submitted in December.
Right, way too early.
Yes, and so they were not living documents.
Right.
And so as we transition and change the budget piece, we're also going to change, because we truly want the goals for that school improvement plan to be aligned with the district goals
Right.
and the school goals.
The
And
involvement.
also know and have the school council have a voice in that, what the site budget is going to be used for moving forward for the following year as well.
Perfect,
Right.
perfect.
So it's
Great.
all connected.
Thank you for explaining it out.
Well said.
Sorry, but now I have a follow-up, though. So, be it, I understand that, but just as a for instance, where there was a change at Whitcomb, you know, where there was the overall change of spreading out STEM across, which in some cases had certain ramifications as to how the expenditures were going to be made. So how are we gonna know, you know, how some of these changes are really gonna come to fruition if we're not having some of that discussion, because we won't have the background knowledge, we're only gonna have some of the money piece. Do you know what I mean?
But
Like-
some of that, so that proposal going forward from ideally, if it was structured, going forward in a plan, would be that the school council and the administration would have been looking at the data and discussing and then trying to develop action steps going forward. And so their school improvement plan that they would be developing would be based on that new model moving forward. And they would be coming here and asking for the school committee to, if there was funding, or presenting, this is the school council, this is our plan moving forward to improve our school.
Okay.
It should all be the same cycle.
Right. I mean, I guess that's where I'm just, it's kind of putting the budget first, but yet we won't really have the numbers in total, because we're waiting on the mayor to do their thing and still then kind of holding out for the school improvement plans. It's almost like we then need to have the other discussion then again, which we do go through the approval process, but.
And it doesn't mean that the conversations aren't taking place now. I mean, the
Right.
school councils are, you know, working towards this. It's not completely diametrical. And I think we've run into some situations where some of the goals of principals and that were developed for the school improvement plan with their school council so early on weren't highlighted enough, and the STEM to STEAM proposal was in there, but it kind of got lost, and as well as the new schedule at the high school. They were in there, but they weren't highlighted at the end.
Right.
Because I think the process wasn't
And I
as
guess
clear,
that's where
let's say
I'm-
as clear.
And that's, I guess, why I'm, you know,
Yep.
I mention it because
I know exactly what you mean.
I don't want a hiccup to come up in the budget process where there are these great ideas that are happening, but yet we kind of all of a sudden find out about them in what I would say awkward ways. And then it leads to awkward discussions as opposed to really a good fluid discussion about the wheres and the whys with the data to support, right? You know, so, and then I guess if I can ask, because it's kind of tied to budget, where Tom Platty had brought up about the technology plan, and I know there's always kind of like a secondary and third level later on where there's outside of the operational budget, there's the technology money that sometimes comes into play, and the overall capital plan. I understand the timing of needing it to be different, but will we have a way of kind of understanding how that's going to tie to the operational budget some? Because there normally are some elements within our operational budget that are technology, touching on technology.
Yep.
So-
Let me try to answer that. So last year, we were fortunate to have available money at the end of the year, and that helped fund our educational technology plan. This year, it looks like, again, we will have some money available at the end of this year, which will be able to help fund the technology plan. So before I would go back to City Council and ask for additional appropriation, I would first go to our budget and make sure we can't spend it down. And the other thing that's nice is that when we can do that, we can get the items a lot faster, because when we go back to City Council for appropriation, usually it's around the time that free cash is happening. And that's like September, October, and we've already started the school year, and that can be pretty difficult sometimes. So what we're trying to do is make sure that if we have any money left in our budget, we would put that towards the technology plan. And then if we would have additional needs above and beyond that, we have other places to access. And then the last step would be going to get an appropriation, because it just takes time to be able to go do that.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Acceptance of minutes.
Motion to accept with typos corrected.
Motion made and seconded to accept. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Public participation. Public participation? Anyone from the public wishing to participate? Seeing none. Action items, Whitcomb Student Exchange Program to Akiruna City.
So we are asking your approval this evening for the trip to continue this learning experience for our students with this American and Japanese cultural exchange. The dates for the trip have been set from October 12th through the 24th, and the selection process will begin in January. So the committee, the advisors are looking for your approval under the guidance of Mr. Daniels for this exchange to occur next year.
Motion to approve.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you.
Thank
Now
you.
you can go home.
You could have watched it.
Well, I didn't know if you'd have questions.
We love the program.
And we love seeing you here.
I love you. I'll stay for a little while.
Okay. Migration to the new MPS website.
Thank you. The current website has agendas and minutes that show documents from 2009, 2010 school year to the present. We are in the process of migrating our documents to a new platform, which is rather cumbersome and exacting. We're moving from, and you'll hear more about this in subsequent meetings, from School Fusion to School Wires. It's an exciting transition that's has a lot of back channeling going on, a lot of back behind the scenes transferring of documents. So I was asked by our consultant who is doing this migration, Beth Wagner, if we're interested in keeping this backlog from 2009 to 2010. She has looked around on several school district sites and has found that most follow the practice of the current year and 1 year back. And I would recommend the 1 year back, because sometimes you like to look back and see, when did we approve the calendar, or when did, a year back seems appropriate, but 5-6 years back does not really seem appropriate. And it's not just a quick push of the button, but the documents really need to be worked on and downloaded and reformatted and brought back to the new platform. So the recommendation is that we house on the new website the current year and 1 year prior, moving forward.
I would agree with that. My only concern would be, and yes, I know that the legal document resides at City Hall as submitted to them, but we weren't always diligent about that. And my only concern with the new requirements under the regulations for if people want public records is that will they be archived somewhere that won't require somebody a tremendous amount of work to get at, even if it's just on a flash drive, so that if it's ever requested, they can get it.
There are paper copies, am I correct? Do we keep paper copies of all of these
Yes.
things? So in the event of a request? it would-
Because I know the law changed, so we just don't want to make more work.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be any more work than it is now,
Okay.
because it's, we've always kept the backup paper copies, so that's kind
Well,
of
no,
the
but
fail-safe.
what I'm saying is that
It's easily downloadable on
right
a flash
now,
drive.
they can access a lot of information without having to ask us for it, because it is there. So I'm just saying, in order to prevent them coming to us.
Oh, all records requests are gonna go through the city clerk. I mean, I've only had 3 records requests in 3 years. It's very rare, and in the event we would do that, we have a lot of these as PDFs. They're
Right.
already stored.
Right.
And we
Oh, no,
back
that's
those
what
up.
I'm saying, yeah, just, if they're backed up somewhere.
Yeah.
They are.
So.
And
I
are the
would-
requests,
I would just make
are the
them-
requests germane to this? They could be, but the ones that you've had have not been, right? No.
Right, so I guess the point is, right now, if people can access them on the website, they don't have to make a request.
Right.
Correct, and that's what I'm saying.
Right.
If you don't want to take away something that they can already get at, is what I'm saying.
Well, I mean, we're not really taking it away, we're just making it, you have to go through more steps to get it.
Right.
It's always gonna be available to anyone who needs it, or,
So my, I guess, motion would be to always maintain the current year and one previous year.
on the website.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would be my motion, I guess,
Yes.
if we're motioning it.
Motion made and seconded to approve the request. That's
Yeah.
the way it was written anyways.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
Thank
Seeing
you.
none, all in favor?
Thank you.
Opposed? Carries.
I'd like to suspend the rules to have a conversation, really, before a vote regarding a communication we received from Counselor Roby regarding a vote we took on September 27th regarding the warrant. Ms. Roby was concerned with our vote and.
Wait, we have to vote to suspend the
Oh,
rules.
I'm sorry.
So was that a
Motion to suspend the rules to discuss this item. sorry.
Motion made and seconded to suspend the rules. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay.
So on September
Discuss that.
27th, 2016, we discussed, per Mr. Bergeron's request, simplifying the warrant process for vote, or for signature, excuse me.
For the non-payroll warrant. Payroll
Not,
warrants are
excuse me, for the
already.
not, right.
And this was because the law has changed.
Correct.
That
Mass
now
General law,
allows
right. Allows
for
for a single
a single
signature.
signature. Been before.
In reviewing her email that we received and reviewing the videotape, because she references our minutes, I believe, I would suggest that our minutes are improper, that we did in fact appoint me as the designee. Ms. Roby is also concerned that you're supposed to appoint a alternate, but the law, based on what she gave us in the actual bill, does not say, there's no reference at all to an alternate. And it was actually the mayor who spoke to Mr. Bergeron about exactly that, and it was his suggestion that it be, if I can't do it, that I contact somebody, just as we do with the payroll, because Ms. Ryan is the one to do payroll, and if she can't make it, she sends the SOS out. So, as I said, I did review the tape. It does appoint me, so I would like to suggest that I will amend the minutes from September 27th to reflect the actual vote as it was.
So the minutes do not reflect that
It
you were the
says,
person
it
to-
does say the committee as a whole. We had a conversation, because the mayor actually said, can we just say it's anybody, designating the
As the
whole.
alternate.
No, as the whole. The way it
Oh.
was, but then it came back to me again as the designee. So
Yeah, that was my memory of it, that we
Yes,
discussed.
yes.
That you were gonna be the point person.
Right.
You're the designee. Should you not be able to fulfill your duties.
Send an SOS.
Rather than have the next runner-up,
specific, right.
anybody
Right.
who's available can go.
So I think my take on it is that we need to amend the minutes to reflect the actual vote.
Vote. Are you comfortable with that? Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, from
the
my-
law does not, it's silent on an
On a
alternate.
secondary, right, on an alternate.
From my memory, you appointed Heidi.
Yeah.
And only reason I say that is because I remember the conversation at the table, and then everyone said, why doesn't Heidi do it? She's the one who asked the questions anyway.
She's the one who scrutinizes it all the time anyway.
Exactly what you said when I was watching it again. Yeah, so everybody went noses and pointed to me. So.
The other thing is that I don't foresee an issue with having to even have an alternate, because if you miss a meeting, for example, we could always just meet 2 days later and sign the warrant.
Correct.
That's the way the law works now, is that she reviews the warrant, goes through it, signs it. So
And reports back. The requirement is
yeah.
the reporting back part of it, almost more than the.
the reporting back comes at any time in the next meeting.
Right, I mean, my interest in us changing along with the new law was more a matter of, like, in the summer.
Yep.
Right.
If you're out of town.
We have to get 3 signatures.
And then we have to get 3 signatures, it's like herding kittens. So it's to make that easier on Vanjie, the folks at City Hall that are sitting around waiting for us to show up.
Right.
That, so in the event, now that we only need 1 instead of 3 signatures, it's the summertime and you're out of town, one of us can go and sign.
Right, or I would even say if it's gonna be an extended absence, that makes sense, but if it's only gonna be a couple days, I wouldn't even ask. I would just delay the warrant a couple days.
Okay.
Because we have them often enough, so it's not like we're not paying our bills. So it's, even if we had to delay just a couple days, it really wouldn't be an issue. And I don't see an issue if there's like a reimbursement, for you. I don't see that as an issue either, because I can ask Diane to put those bills on the city warrant. And you don't sign the city warrant.
No.
The mayor does. So that way that way you don't have to sign your own warrant. So I mean, I see multiple ways to be able to just make this work going forward.
So the issue, though, because the minutes of the September 27th meeting, we approved in a subsequent meeting. So therein is the issue. How do you unapprove minutes so that you can amend them, and then, I don't know what the process is for that.
I don't know either.
I don't
I've
recall ever being confronted with this before. So,
I would assume, well, no, I would assume just if the public came forward, in this case, Ms. Roby came forward, and found an error to it that we didn't catch, that we could vote on we could bring them forward again as amended.
It'll be on the next agenda.
Right, that they're amended minutes, that I bring those forward to the next meeting.
we can make it up, sure. I don't know if that's the law or not.
I can double check,
yes, I
with
think we need to table
Ms.
it for
McNulty.
now.
Yeah.
And we can double check what the
Okay, that's
process
fine.
needs to
Yep.
be to correct minutes that have already been accepted.
So motion to table and seek counsel on how to correct it.
Agreed. Motion made and seconded to table. All in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Acceptance of donations and gifts. We have quite a number of them tonight. So, the first one, Scholarship America, going to Whitcomb School, $1,000.
Motion to approve, or accept, excuse me.
Motion made and seconded to accept. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Life Touch, National School Studios. We're gonna do these all in one vote. Richard School, student activities, $1,559.37. Kane School student activities, $1,278.84. Jarrick School student activities, $1,835.79. And Whitcomb School activities, $1,793 even.
Motion to accept.
Motion made and seconded to accept. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Marlborough Education Foundation, I believe we already accepted this at the last meeting, but
I don't think they were on the form, though.
they weren't on the form, but we did accept them.
I took the checks.
And you took the checks. So we can vote on it again. The teacher grants and awards to Jarrick, Richard, Whitcomb, and the high school for $6,731.20.
Motion to accept with gratitude.
Motion made and seconded to accept with gratitude. Any discussion? A preemptive strike on the vote. Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Brigham Family Trust, Hildreth School, $2,143.
Motion to accept with gratitude.
Motion made and seconded to accept
With
with
gratitude,
gratitude.
Yes.
I know she said something, I couldn't really hear. Motions, any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? Carries. Mass DESE Special Education Program Improvement Grant, $37,018.
Motion to accept.
Motion made and seconded to accept. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Mass DESE Special Education 240 Grant Carryover, $37,460.
Motion to accept.
Motion made and seconded to accept. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you very much. Reports of school committees, subcommittees. Anything? Mrs. Hennessy.
Thank you. I just wanted to update everyone that we did have a policy subcommittee meeting. Was it just yesterday? Yeah, it was just yesterday. And I know, it's been a long 24 hours. And we will then be having another policy subcommittee meeting coming up on the morning of the 18th because we have a lot of things on deck. So, there you go. At deck.
On deck, at deck. Any other subcommittees?
Good one.
Members forum.
Just a reminder that this Thursday, the 12th at 7 p.m., there's a Wickham fifth grade concert.
Wickham fifth grade concert.
And a reminder, if you have not signed up yet, tomorrow night is the If Only presentation at the Wickham School.
Yes, we did talk, oh, you were out of the room.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The,
I chimed in.
the SAC
One of the
students
schools.
told us about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, but it's a good reminder. I
Yes,
think.
absolutely. Any other members wishing to be formed? Seeing none.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn at 9:25. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carries. We are adjourned at 9:25.